Yo, what's going on, guys? Sekapoko here, bringing you another Genshin Impact video. For this video, we're going to be talking about the new Ganyu update that just came to the game, and we're going to be talking about why she is nothing like Amber, and not really a Cryo Amber, and more of a kind of a hybrid between how Mona is in the game, and this with the booty, you know what I'm saying, and Diona. Hybrid between the two characters, between Mona and Diona. It's basically how I'm seeing the character versus seeing, a character that's going to be more built off the Battle Bunny style mechanic and charge attacks. I think the character is more closely related toward these two characters versus the way it was Amber. Let's go ahead and jump into it. Alrighty, guys, so we got Ganyu's stuff, and she came out. She has new voice actor and stuff, and there's going to be brand new abilities that she has. The first thing that she has, of course, is the charge attack, which looks like a frostbite arrow, and the frostbite arrow they're showing here is showing a double charge animation that's going to then proc an area effect attack. There are two things that I notice about this charge attack. The first thing I notice is that the headshot damage, of course, is the critical strike, as you can see up here with the bigger numbers, and the subsequent hits on the bottom down here are going to be non-critical strikes. But the explosion damage is much higher than the normal damage. That means that the explosion damage that you're getting might not be able to crit, or might be able to crit. I do not know based on what the critical chance here. I also don't think I believe some speculation was put out there about the charge attack speed of this character and how fast it is. And I'll show you a side-by-side comparison with her and Amber in this video, so you can kind of see exactly where the charge attack speed is with Ganyu versus another character like Amber, so you can see where the charge lies. I don't think there's going to be anything different there, but the explosion damage, we're going to have to see how good that is for her. If you don't know more about it, level 1 is just a normal charge attack doing cryo damage, and then level 2 is the frostbite arrow, which does area effect cryo damage that you can see here in the area effect damage. All right, so here's the way you can currently use Amber. I'm going to go ahead and use Bennett right here. We're going to switch over to Sucrose, going to swirl in, switch back over here, come back in, use a melt, come back in with this, get the cryo particle up, switch back over to Bennett, get the field down, through this up, and then headshot, like 46k. So for those of you who don't know, one of the ways that you can build Amber is you can build her with a Sharpshooter's Oath. The Sharpshooter's Oath allows you to get extra critical damage on enemies while also improving the weak point damage. Now, one of the things that I'm not clear about is if you do that and go for a weak point damage hit, will this talent right here for the Frostflake arrow actually proc to all the other subsequent hits and actually increase your overall damage based on the weak point hit? If that's not the case and it doesn't include a weak point hit and it's just an actual hit that's going to be directly toward the enemy's bodies, it's going to be very, very different. Now, one of the weapons that a lot of people have brought up to me in general was the Messenger after I put out Amber videos, and the Messenger actually allows you to do an extra surge hit against enemies, as attack damage is critical damage. They can only occur once every 10 seconds. The Messenger, I find to be not that very good of a weapon because the 200% surge on damage is really nice, but since you're starting off a very, very low amount of base attack, you're really not getting a huge amount of damage from using a weapon like the Messenger. So all the 3-star weapons in the game, I'm not a huge fan of for her specifically, because it doesn't really work in the way that I would personally want to use a weapon. For other weapons, like the Blacklift Warbow, this will be an exceptional weapon for her because it actually provides critical damage, which allows you to use the Cryo set in order to boost your overall damage. So unfortunately, with this kind of strategy, with a Wanderer's Troop set for Ganyu, I don't know if this is going to be a viable strategy because you can rely heavily on Elemental Mastery, you can rely on other things in order to prove your damage with Pyro Goblets, etc., and get a very large headshot because of the way the melt reaction works. Now, if you're using a Pyro reaction on a Cryo character, you can actually get that damage to be doubled with an Elemental reaction when you're going for melts. But unfortunately, when you go the opposite direction with a Cryo character going onto a Pyro particle, you only get 50% damage in the bump instead of a 100% damage. Now, the thing that will be different, of course, with Ganyu is that you'll actually get an explosive hit that'll happen afterward that will make it so that you can get extra damage on top of that, which will not be based on an elemental reaction. So that means that you're going to need a little bit more cryo damage and less elemental mastery for your reaction-based damage. Okay, the second ability that we have is Ganyu's E, and the Ice Lotus is a little bit different than the original description. The original description is leaving Ice Lotus behind, Ganyu dashes backwards, shunning all impurity and dealing AoE cryo damage. The Ice Lotus continuously taunts enemies, attracting them around it. Now, the original description of this ability just said it was going to just taunt enemies around it and not drop AoE damage before when it came out. So now, since it basically procs damage twice, it's a little bit different than Amber and a little bit different than Mona. So you can see in between, they're going to be two different styles of taunts. This is actually probably one of the better solutions that they could have provided, with a huge surge of damage that also provide an ability so you can melt off this ability and then go in on damage. So a lot of people talk about the taunts for this. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw the bunny out here, and you can see it's gonna go directly for the bunny. Knocks the bunny away, and that's a big improvement that Ganyu has over Amber. Is that the Frost Tokyo doesn't look like it can be moved, which is a really positive thing. So let's go ahead and throw out the bunny again. Boom. Taunts immediately. You have no other problems with it. But the main issue with the bunny is that once it dies, you're just like totally fucked and get knocked away. And getting it knocked away is really bad. The cooldown on this ability is about 10 seconds. The duration on the taunt is about 6 seconds. So every 10 seconds, you can get 2 melt procs in there. So if you're looking for a character like Diluc, is this going to be good for him? Potentially, if you do this for Klee, it'll be much better for her because the freeze proc initially, and then you can then, of course, wait for a second or two, get some charge attacks in, throw an E in or whatever, and then use another melt proc. So for Klee, this might be a little bit better, but for Diluc, I would say not as good. Now, the closest comparison I can use is a character like Mona that's going to do the Airy Pulsate Taunt, but unfortunately, you don't get the constant Pulsate. You just get that initial proc reaction with the Pulsate, and then you can go in with a character like this, and then use grouping mechanics in order to keep the characters looped in one spot. That allows you to then use follow-up attacks, etc., and characters like Sucrose to just keep guys consistently crowd controls while you consistently switch and do more and more damage in that direction. And the last ability is going to be Ganyu's ultimate. Now, what I'm seeing here is that it's a very, very large cryo field that lasts, from what I've seen, about 15 seconds or so, and does 1 hit per second. Now, it starts up from what I've seen probably about 100% of her overall damage at rank 6, around that point, and that means that you can be doing about 1500% damage at talent level 6. Now, that's a really high amount of damage that you could potentially deal over that duration, but I don't, again, know if every single icicle in this will cause damage, or if it's actually just a pulsate mechanic, or the icicles actually have to land on people. If it's a random targeted effect based on the location inside of this kind of ice storm, and it can hit multiple times based on where you're standing inside the storm, that could be very different as well. We don't know based on this kind of information, but based on this, since it's a very long ultimate at 15 seconds and it's kind of a field thing, you can clearly see that Ganyu is more of a support-based character, and Ganyu is a character that you can pop an ultimate out, then switch off to the field and go to a different character. This is really good for melt procs, etc. But what I can see here that I really like to do is use a character like Child to get a permafreeze in there if we can lock them in one place. You can also use Mona or other characters like Barbara in order to get permafreezes in, or potentially just use Jinchu with this area effect ability around himself to get more and more freezes in. You can then use a double support style mechanic to get multiple hit sets of damage in while the enemy's completely frozen. Now, I wanted to test out a Cryo set build and see if the critical rate from the Cryo artifact set would actually affect a character while the main character that you're using with the Cryo set is off the field. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to end up using Kaya with his ultimate ability for the Glacial Waltz, and then I'm going to use that in order to freeze an enemy and see if the critical rate increases while he's off the field. And I'm only at 13% crit chance, so if I'm critting at least half the time, you know it's working. If I'm not critting half the time, it's not working. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and throw this up, and then throw up my Kaya ultimate, and then we're going to switch off of Kaya. I'm going to stand here. You can see it's critting about half the time. So I would say that, yeah, it works. Energy gains be like this. Nope. Damn, dude, his energy recharge is so slow. All right, let's try again. We're gonna go ahead and use Kaya's ultimate. Switch to Barbara. And crit, 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 crit. All right, cool, yeah. So I can clearly say that the Kaya ultimate, while he's off the field, kind of gets snapshotted for the crit rate based upon the Cryo set. So a character like Ganyu, you can actually use the Cryo set in order to get permafreezes on enemies based upon that kind of set. And if you wanted to just keep the Cryo particle up on different pieces, that would allow you to do a Cryo particle up, just get the extra 20%. But if you don't really care about Ganyu's overall damage impacting you, this allows the Cryo set to work, but I don't know if it's going to be the best possible set. But it does show that if you did want to get some crit rate on Ganyu, you wanted to boost out her in a different way, we can do that. Now, Ganyu is also a character that scales off critical damage. So you actually get critical damage as you level up the character and get ascend her even further. So a weapon like the Blacklift Warbow could potentially be the best free-to-play option, because if you're using a weapon, a set like the Cryo set, you get a large amount of critical damage on your set. You get attack bonuses, etc. And this is going to be a potentially really good. And of course, is the Prototype Crescent, which aim shots and weak spots increase increase movement speed by 10% and attack by a percentage over the duration. I personally have tested out this weapon, and I find it to be a worse weapon overall than using a Sharpshooter's Oath when hitting the weak spot. But because there's an AoE proc and she has a lot of other types of damage that come out after that, the Prototype Crescent would be okay. The problem is the mid-range base attack on the Prototype Crescent doesn't allow you to do a lot of amount of damage, and that's why the Blacklift Warbow would be a better option, because of very high base attack in comparison. Now, if you are going to be using Ganyu in a fashion where you're just a support, you're trying to use her E ability as well as her Q ability, of course, a weapon like the Stringless could be a very good option for her, but most people are going to be using this on their Fischl or their Venti instead, because it's a much better option for those types of characters. The Battle Pass weapon, unfortunately, because upon normal and aim shots, you get 50% chance to generate a Cyclone. This is actually going to be a white damage hit, and if you're building for Cryo, this is not going to boost your damage in a significant way. So I think the comparison between Amber might have been a bit premature, because the way Amber works, even with low attack percentage ratios of do elemental mastery reactions, etc., might not be the same way you're going to build in Ganyu, because the two characters are built very differently, and building a Wanderer's Troop set on her doesn't really seem like the best call in the world, unless you're going to be firing from a very high distance while also causing elemental reactions first by using a character like Bennett to tee up the elemental reaction and cause a melt reaction with a character like Ganyu. The last set you can potentially use is the Noblesse Oblige set. We're using a 2-set Noblesse Oblige or using a 4-set Noblesse Oblige to trigger a 20% attack bump on your team. For using this character more like a support character with your ultimates out, this could potentially be a very good overall set for Ganyu. But from what I can see, I would much rather be using the Cryo set, because personally, I would much rather have 15% more damage on my entire kit, because almost all my damage is based on Cryo. And I would much rather have, instead of boosting my overall team damage by 20%, I'd much rather have that same damage getting boosted also crit almost 20 to 40% more of the time, because the Cryo particle being out a lot more. As an overall team composition, one of the team compositions I think is going to be really, really strong with Ganyu is going to be a character like Klee, as well as Bennett on the field, and Sucrose. E actually pops out and does damage while Ganyu flies backwards. This causes an initial element to come out, so it allows you to use Klee in the mix in order to do damage. If you use a character like Diona to pop up an elemental reaction on enemies, you can then use a character like Klee to cause melt reactions on as many enemies as you want to, and then you could of course use Sucrose to group the enemies and get them in one position while the enemies are taunted in one location, get elemental particles on them, and do lots of damage to them. I believe the primary part of Ganyu is going to be her E and her Q ability, not so much her charge attack, and I think we've all been focusing on the charge attack in that direction. So by focusing more on her supporting style abilities in order to get everything like well done in this direction, I think that would be the much better way to go. Lee, shut up. Hey guys, well, my name's Sekapoko. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys enjoyed the video, of course, like, subscribe. Let me know what you guys think about Ganyu in the comment section down below. Let me know if you're going to be going for, etc. I've got something for her on my main account. I'll see you guys in the summons. But thank you guys for watching. Lee!